Hello, and welcome to Geek Out My Sleeve channel. This is Geek Out number 52, which is going to be over Ruthless, Book 5 in the Completionist Chronicles by Dakota Krout, narrated by Luke Daniels. And buttons, more buttons.
Did you say ruthless or toothless?
Ruthless, though. Toothless is it's an interesting intro to dragons and takes it kind of on the different light for the whole how to train your dragon. Yeah,
Yeah,
where they're
yeah, that's
actually
true.
it's
Good
like
reference.
riding dragons versus dragons pillaging towns and hordes of gold.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Oh, we do get a good one-liner in this book about dragons. Oh, it's one of the debuffs. Yes, I did see that dragon was polymorphed and didn't want to be seen, but I saw it anyway, and that's why we're running. Yeah.
Yes. I remember we were talking about this a little bit before we hopped on here. We listened, or at least I listened to, I think I got the Divine Dungeon first. You were still binging Hardcore the Land, and then you eventually picked up on Divine Dungeon when maybe like the second book was out or third book was out.
I don't
Um,
remember.
still pretty early. Long ago. Dakota Krout now has multiple series, collaborated with multiple different authors, his own Mountaindale Press publishing over like 20 some titles out in the last 4 years. And I remember early on reading, and it's just like a great lesson for like how to deal with critics, right? Like I remember early on the first couple books, people complaining about his puns and his like fourth wall references to stuff, and going back and looking at Ruthless, it just scratches the surface compared to Ruthless. Like
Yeah.
he's doubled down almost every book, and now it's just like if there's not a dad joke or a bad pun or a video game reference or pop culture reference that we actually get, not being part of the whole society culture bit, but like our type of references, our geeky references, and get it. Um, I wonder if I'm even reading Dakota Krout anymore, right? Like we used to
Well,
get one
but
or two title references, and Ruthless was just throughout this whole book.
yeah,
And the puns are everywhere. And yeah,
the
yeah,
Easter
Easter
eggs
egg.
are all over the place. But that's
Yes.
where I feel like it's correct for the niche because if
Hmm.
you're in lit RPG, it's essentially, an MMO come to life or trapped in the MMO, a Sekai type stuff. So those
Hmm.
Easter eggs that's native or natural for it.
Yeah. Yeah. At least the ones that we like to play with. Um, but this book, we were kind of hinting at it last month when we did book 3, 3.5, 4, however you want to count. This is like the fifth one in the Completionist Chronicles, but the fourth one in the series because we had the side quest. Um, but it really brings it all together. We get to see more of our the Divine Dungeon references, right? Like we get to see over a millennia how the universes are connected. Um, like when we bring Hans into the storyline, or was it
Yeah.
Dangerlicious?
Yeah,
Uh,
the immortalized in song,
yes,
the
yes.
litmus test for the deity of bards. If he likes you, you're out. If he doesn't like you,
Hmm.
and then the
Hmm.
whole surreal conversation. with Tomalus, who is actually Tom, but
Yes.
at the end of the Divine Dungeon series, he regains all his former glory, so he's not the Tom we knew and loved for most of the series.
Yes. Yes. He is. Yes. Yes. And just all the feels like it teases that there's just so much more going on behind the background, right? Because now we have Joe and the Wanderers Guild and all these guys coming together in their own kind of Cal type energy, uniqueness, perfectionist, drivenness, with the master Uncle Tatum, who's kind of in limbo right now, still book 5, and we have him on their side with Joe being a champion there. Then we have Bard, who is now the divine champion of Hans. We have Tomalus, who is Krim's god, who's a champion for Krim, who's good buddies with Joe. And I don't know if he's directly part of the Wanderers Guild. I think he's part of T Snake's Guild, right? Who's closely
Yeah, yeah.
associated.
I
So we
don't
have.
know why he's still around. That didn't quite add up for me because I guess Tara pops up and we have that whole like, oh, you're spying
Mm-hmm.
on me incident with
Mm-hmm.
Tara, and she's from the other guild. Um, I don't know if he
Yeah.
bailed or was
I
a
don't
cool
know
character,
either.
convenient name, puns.
He might be around because he's a champion for Tomless, right? And Tomless's shrine is there. So like
Okay,
this
so
book is very much about the Wanderers Guild dealing with all of their enemies, aka people that Joe has managed to tick off, keeping
yeah.
it PG here for the early part of the stream. Um, if you guys haven't already, please hit the like button, subscribe. If you're new to this song and dance and haven't picked up already, spoilers ahead. And thanks for hanging out with us live and or catching us on the replay. We like to do this every Sunday, currently 8 p.m. Eastern. We're toying with some different times going into 2021 to play a little bit better with our international book friends. And as always, links below. Hang out with us 24/7 on Discord. Did I miss any housekeeping items there, Pete?
No, that essentially covers it.
Cool.
International and day shifters.
Yes. Yes. Those people that can handle direct sunlight. Um,
Oh man, there's a song that I would play, but I cannot find the step.
uh, yes, don't
Long
don't.
story short, the sunlight hurts my eyes, and don't look to the skies
Mm-hmm.
because the sunlight
Mm-hmm.
hurts my eyes. Anyway, so back to Ruthless. Yet again, it's kind of a mixed blessing with Dakota Krout where we covered a lot of material. There's a lot of
Mm-hmm.
stuff that I feel like he just doesn't flesh out, but at the
Mm-hmm.
same time, it's so enjoyable progressing to where I don't get caught up on a bunch of what ifs, and it's just continual progressing. They pretty much told us everything that's going to happen in the next book, or I feel, but it's not out. Where he ends up getting a bunch of powers to essentially transport buildings,
Mm-hmm.
but he's still got to build up his power base to get there.
Yes. Yes. I enjoy these books because it really scratches the video game itch for me, right? Like
Yeah,
so much of it's just back in the saddle. Let's go out and game with our buddies and just pursue becoming the best we can be in our own way. And this book was very much another iteration of that. And then add in all the additional layers of lore, connecting the multiverse together, getting our references into his other titles, and In a lot of ways, I feel like not a whole lot happened in this book, but in others, a lot. We wrapped up a lot of threads, right? Or at least
Well,
got
so for
some closure
me,
there.
I felt like the guild was finally given back to Joe,
Mm,
and this is where, from the Divine Dungeon series to the Completionist series, I was a little disappointed in humanity as a whole, and thus his life.
I was
But
about to say,
essentially, King Henry and Marie wanted to do better. The Master, Kamehameha, all the other freaking nobility and higher ups, so they're the ones left to essentially start from the ground up with everybody who's survived this. But due to humanity being humanity and everything else, King Henry and Marie just essentially put up their big walls, and the nobility is still super snobby, generic like they were in the previous series. But Joe is really breaking down all those walls, taking out the Archmage, messing with the I build stuff guild. I can't think of the name. Yeah. So anyway, he's
oh, the you're talking about the oh man, I just
Carpenter's
had it.
Guild, maybe.
No, no. Archaeologist?
No,
No.
that's digging bones.
Man, it's been one of those weekends. Anyway.
So I feel like the guild is finally helping him and giving back, and we're just seeing his stuff accelerate more and more. And then, due to being disappointed with where humanity's at from Divine Dungeon series, and then seeing literally the same shenanigans happening with their own guild, and oh man, it was so sly. Essentially, Aiton was like, "Hey, so you're still gonna help improve the guild, right? And get us to town rank 5." And he's like, "Yeah, I'll do that." He's like, "All right, well, quest complete." Sends
Yes.
him to be the sage, or not sage, the
No, it's a sage, isn't it?
no, sage is like ranking. It's
Oh,
something else with
elder.
elder, maybe.
Yeah, first elder.
Sounds right. Anyway, so a lot of other good points was we get a lot more of Jess in this book, and
Mm-hmm.
she's one of those characters where it was hard to figure out how she was going to gain XP and progress being a tactician, but oh man, Dakota Krout nailed it on the head, and it is a combination of an assassin and someone who sets up trips to go through dungeons and scouts and all this extra.
Mm-hmm.
Long story short, very unique organic growth with her. She
Mm-hmm.
uses snakes. She like resurrects dead snakes and then uses them to go through a dungeon all incognito as long as possible and maps it out and gets XP based off of how they go through the dungeon. So that was exciting. And where who is it? Jay the guard who we always see. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's one of those other ones where like is Jay equivalent to like a police officer where he's got a quota and he gets XP based off of how many, problems he solves. Oh
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's a great series. Would this is one of those weird ones where I would say Divine Dungeon series is the core or the foundation for the Completionist Chronicles series,
Right.
but I would almost say read them in publication order because I think he was like book 2 or 3 on Divine Dungeon when he created the very first ritualist.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it was a lot easier to connect the dots or get the causal connections. um,
Yes.
it's
Yes.
a great series for like rereadability because then you catch a little bit more.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I agree with that. Um, it's just a lot of fun. the whole overarching series. Looking forward to getting into some of his side series as well, which is something I don't always enjoy. Yet he's done a pretty good job, it seems, mapping it all out to be inclusive, that it all synergizes really well. Like the Artanium, our Sunshine and Love mage and
Or
his
I would just call
whole
him Pillow Mage.
Pillow
But yeah.
Mage. Yeah, I really want to get into his stories. They're a lot of fun, and um,
Well, and the way he does it, I think this is the only one that has like a direct like Cal the what is it? Something altruistic lexicon, which is literally CAL. So
hmm
Cal is Cal.
hmm
And then, you know, it's similar but not direct.
yeah, yeah. And for me, this book also just goes to show that Dakota Krout's really coming into his flow as far as writing goes. Looking back to earlier in the series, a lot of my complaints kind of got addressed in this one. We were just talking about getting to see some more of our side characters that we enjoy, right? Like he found great ways to incorporate them because, like, obviously, we're just getting a snapshot of this overarching story through the Completionist Chronicles, right? Like the world of Eternium, which is part of Cal's soul space that we later find out, and has like all these other characters we know and love and enjoy from the multiverse are included. And then like lit RPG series, though I've noticed some of them are getting longer, but the Completionist Chronicles and Dakota Krout books stay relatively short, like 10 to 14 hours. Just going from memory, seems to be the range. Does that sound right?
Yeah, yeah. He's on the shorter side, and that's where I feel like some of his ideas aren't fleshed out. But it also gives him an opportunity to accelerate the timetable and to power up. And
Yeah.
he's like the opposite of the hyperbolic time chamber.
Yeah. And like I was saying with this book, a lot of my previous complaints seem to be addressed. Like, yeah, we followed Joe. Yeah, we progressed the main storyline, but we were also able to pull in some of those threads and pull in some of those other subplots that he's been involved with right before he leaves this area, right?
Yeah,
Because,
like we got Dale shattering Earth that was deemed to be like an unusable spell, but Joe
mm-hmm,
was able to figure it out.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. But then, like you said, we also had like the jesters from Rays, where he overthrew the underground arena, right?
Yeah.
And the nobles with the grape, the floodwaters that he stole from there that he really ticked off. The silence mage from book two, which we
Or
dealt with in
yeah,
book
three,
one and
two.
book two, because book one he overthrew the
The
archmage,
Archmage. Oh
and
yeah,
then the
it's
silence
two.
mage, yeah,
Yeah,
in
yeah, yeah.
Regicide, because that was his name. So like we dealt with, you know, book one and book two, then book three, and then book four. Gosh, who was our big guy that we ticked off in book four that came? Oh,
Book four was
the
the end of two when we go to the dungeon and we find the warden
mhm.
who and we're finding the warden and we end up with
Yeah.
the psychomancer where the current warden sends someone to pose as a prisoner to go through and then gets, his mind taken over, influenced by the psychomancer, and then releases Endgame and there's a lot
Uh,
of a lot of other stuff that happened, but that was my big like what
they also pulled that in with using the Endgame's blood for leveling up the Ruthless
or yeah, they
title or
jumped
whatever.
from like Ruthless 2 all the way up to Ruthless 5 because the
hmm
nobles ended up
50 million kills.
donating resurrection bombs or
Yeah. I
totems,
think they're
and
war
it
totems is what they were called.
yeah.
The Floodwater family, and that was he finally got the boot, and Joe gave the king and queen kind of an avenue to come in and put that down, put the oppressive monopolies that were it was staggering growth and development, um, all these other things. Like we wrapped it all up in this book without it feeling rushed for me, giving them an excuse to come together as the Wanderer Guild progresses. We also got to see some of the guild politics,
Yeah.
like a snapshot, a filtered, watered down version through Joe's perspective, because he doesn't want to be overly involved in the process, but we still got to see that it's there. And for
Or well,
me,
that plus we have a clear cut end goal because
mm-hmm,
essentially these are the old school people who real world money can be transported into Eternium, and then they bankrolled setting up a guild, getting guild housing, buying guild quests, which cost a couple hundred gold just to get in,
right,
and
right.
really let them catapult from the beginning. But they're all old school bankers, do whatever military guys that it doesn't really apply in the
Trust
game
fund
world.
kids,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, and Joe deals with that in Joe's way, and I think A10 really utilizes him to bring in and say the stuff. Like there's always that good manager slash leader that's like, hey, one of the reasons why I like having you around is you can say the reality in a very politically incorrect way to get it out into the room without me having to say it because I'm the guild leader, right? Like
Oh,
Joe
yeah.
comes in and
Plus,
is like, stop being snots, work hard, focus, apply game logic rules. Let's come at this with, gamer perspective and focus on this stuff instead of just being all like, meh, somebody deal with our problems. We just want to sit around and drink wine and okay, fine. Like, let's not worry about progressing. Let's just put our feet up and let everyone else pass us. A10 can't tell those trust fund kids to go, jump off a cliff. But Joe, in all his blunt,
hammer
direct
words.
hammer words, he could be like, stop
Stop
being.
looking at it at, old Earth terms. It's
Mm-hmm.
use game logic. Get gamers in here. They're going to be min maxing introverts. It's going to be
Yes.
strange. Listen to
Yes.
them.
Yes.
And
It,
then, what was the Hammerworks incident there? It was, for all we know, our location got leaked because someone had a PR campaign going out, and then, Hammerworks had triggered, you lost reputation with someone.
yes.
But that's irrelevant because with the influx of people, they're not accepting anyone anyway.
And they had to do that, right?
Yeah.
For good reason. And I really enjoyed getting to see that side of things, because that was something that always really drew me into MMORPGs was the guild mechanics and building that aspect of it. So while I don't know if I would want a book that was devoted to all that, though maybe I would.
It's a nice slice of life excerpt. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
There was enough in there. Unlike, I guess, and that's where Brandon Sanderson quote, you need to write the book as if every part is somebody's favorite part. And I ran
Yes.
into this problem when I was reviewing Brandon Sanderson's book to Mistborn or Era 1, where I was like, oh man, so much politicking. We didn't kill anyone until, like 15 hours in. Where's my combat? But
Mm,
I'm forgetting who joined us for that.
oh, Mistborn. Gosh, we had a couple different buddies in and out. Was it
Anyway, there was
Chaz
a good
maybe?
counterpoint where they really enjoyed the politics behind it. So for me, I feel like a lot of things didn't get fleshed out enough. For
Mm-hmm.
that in particular, it was a nice reality moment, but then I was glad it was over.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's I think it's hard for authors to balance that, especially when they're new and young. We've talked a little bit about Dakota Krout's
Well,
growth.
it's everybody has their own style.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, and it's figuring that out. And sometimes all you can do is trial and error, wait for feedback. Um, but I feel this one was really well done. It wrapped it up really well. We got our nice big combat there at the end. We got to see more of the game mechanics as Joe kind of tested his bounds, the lore and how the backstory went. I feel like we really got to see more of the party development and growth there, and Joe's growth as a party leader.
Oh man, I wish I collected the quote from Jackson where Jackson literally lays it out and he's like, "Hey, you're at a crossroads. If you micromanage, you're going to lose them. If you are completely hands off, they don't need you. You either have this option or that option." And he's like, "Wait a minute, didn't you tell me not to do that? Not to be hands off?" And he's like, "No, that's my choice."
Right, right.
Oh
And
man, there are a couple good quotes I wish I grabbed. I
there's a
did
lot of
grab
good
this
quotes in
one
this book.
though from Boris.
Fine. You can't decide to be responsible for everyone. If they want a different path, all they need to do is walk it.
Hold on. Sorry, volumes.
Fine. You can't decide to be responsible for everyone. If they want a different path, all they need to do is walk it.
Yeah. Essentially, Joe's trying to figure out more for his ritualist class, and he's going more into building where the rest of his covenant wants to be like evil overlords or blood ritualist or,
Hmm.
all this other crazy stuff. But Boris lays it out to him like, you can't be responsible for everybody if they want to walk a different path. That's on them. All they need to do is do it.
And we say it all the time, but that's one of the things I enjoy about books is when you get those quotes that are just so easy to apply to your own life, right? Like, good on you for looking out for others and, being considerate for them, but you got to walk your own path, right? And if they really don't want to be on it with you, you know, they can find another one.
I
Did you have
forgot what I was
something?
going to say.
I'm sure it was incredibly profound. When it comes back, let us know. Um, and then going back to the subplots, Boris with the scholars, we got to see that
Oh,
story arc wrap up. Um,
did we? I don't think we
just
did.
well, we got to see more of it. The
Yeah,
fact that we
yeah,
know
we got
Boris
to
got sent
see.
off
Yeah,
running
yeah,
errands
Boris.
and the politics back there. Um, and
I
oh
felt like it
gosh,
just added more layers. The Thieves Guild of upright men or fine, outstanding upright men. I don't know. Anyway, some random guild name who carts around NPCs and lets them almost die, breaks their word, then pocket
yeah.
snake for the win.
Yes, yes. That was funny. For a moment, I forgot we had that whole scene in there with the tower, with the quest from Tomalus. We had a lot of good action points in this, a lot of good
Oh yeah.
training as they level up. Um,
Plus, interesting, unique ways to kind of batch do it. Because before it was work for an hour, get one skill point in a given
right.
skill, or do multiple at once, and each point extra you do takes an hour. Oh
Hmm.
man, I was so sad when he gave up the puzzle cube when he was on his way to get his second
Oh,
specialization.
yes.
Like it was pretty clutch the way it all happened, but at the
Hmm.
same time, it was like stuffed by the treasure lord or loot lord or whatnot.
Yes. Kind of makes you wonder what else he could have gotten that would have been epic and awesome.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
but he's at the point to where he became a reductionist. So even if it was epic or awesome, if it was material related, it wouldn't have
mhm.
been extra special.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm excited. We wrapped up a lot of good pieces, but we also got some foreshadowing for a lot of other potential, like with his
I'm
covenant.
I'm
Um,
curious to see. Or yeah, go ahead.
oh, I was just, you can chime in after this, but like the ritualist covenant and everything involved there, the fact that he's pretty much going to set them up as squad leaders as their own, and how everything's lined up to where they pretty much have to. And he has his five that are working under him. I'd have to go through and list off the names. So then to
Anna,
have
Curly, Big Mo. Yeah, I feel like there's more.
Yeah, I want to say there's four or five. But then to have them doing their own covenant inside the Wanderers, and them being the only one that can do rituals, at least as of now, since Joe's the only class trainer, just like how that could scale.
Or
Um,
that I felt like was another just like great grand life lesson kind of deal, because the whole time his covenant is doing their own thing and developing rituals, they went a more lethal route or a
hmm
more deadly damaging route, and he
hmm
kept trying to rein them in like, hey, this doesn't have any tracking. You could easily be a player killer if the selected target moves and non-combatant gets away, and just
hmm
all this and all that. And then it's not until like the very end when he activates that final ritual, which, coup de grace is the whole thing, and they win, which, finally solidifies to them like this could have gone, like, this is about as bad as it gets.
Yes. Yes.
So I'm curious to see their development. I feel there's a lot of things that they'll still do similarly, but they'll kind of, I guess, pick up the slack. I'm curious if it's going to be kind of like all fresh start for where Joe's at after going through the Bifrost,
hmm
or if it's going to be like a split thing where he's going to need to either get material back to Tiny McTownface to upgrade it and to get people to their second specializations, or are Jackson, oh, not Rose. Dang it, you messed me up last time you did that. Anyway, our
Yeah.
core members are going to get their second specialization and join Joe. And there are a lot of things through the Bibros that I'm excited about. When we had our, upright men forest moment going into the water dungeon,
hmm
um, we essentially got a bit of backstory or lore for the dwarves, and I feel like that's what
Yeah.
happened in this world's history, which was cool. Plus, they mentioned when in the other second or third book, when Joe gets his building specialization and he's reading the scroll, there's only one final egg building Pathfinder's Hall left in the world, and that was with the dwarves, which were at the point where we're finding the
Mm.
dwarves. So that's
So
very
you think he's
exciting.
going to
And
go dwarfs then? Because he
oh,
has to
oh, oh yeah.
pick.
We didn't like the elves in Divine Dungeon. And I'm
I'm.
not saying, I'm thinking like all of our antagonists are gonna go that way or
Oh,
stay on Midgard,
are we
because
are we going to
each
see our dwarf orc buddy again in some
or
way?
Evan the Dwarf.
Yeah, yeah. Find out that like
He's
he's
been
a
on a
big.
trip for quite some time, since like book 3 of Divine Dungeon.
uh,
He's gonna be another god or something.
I wonder how much King Henry, because like there was some foreshadowing there towards the end about how he knew more than Joe realized, including X, Y, and Z. And
Yeah.
Joe, like he brought down this harsh sentence to show that the kingdom isn't going to deal with this nonsense, et cetera, et cetera. Um,
But it
but
really didn't hinder him that much. He
it
went from like extended family, which is tier 5 or whatever, down to like reluctantly friendly, which is still positive, but
but
yeah.
how much is that going to help him being in a new area that he's not overly friendly with
Well,
the
I don't
humans?
think it's
You
gonna
know,
have a
like,
whole lot of relevance.
I don't know. Come on, like
Eh,
factions, looking at other
well,
factions. If you're too buddy
because
buddy,
when it okay, I guess it could be a big thing, but at the same time, I felt like there was a line in there, his reputation or the penalty for coming back to um whatever the home base or the
mm,
main human world is,
yeah,
was only with interaction. No, I guess yeah, okay, yeah, sorry, full circle. Yeah, I want to say yeah.
yeah, yeah. He has to be. He's banished for a year and a day. Um, and I think we'll be able to focus more on him at the beginning of the book, but a couple of his party members are close. And you know that with Joe gone, the Wanderers Guild, like A10, are going to be doing everything they can to get the next round of people powered up and following Joe,
Yeah, and it's
right?
gonna split the guilds, keep all
Hmm.
the other people.
Yeah, and keep them
Plus,
back in a safe zone,
he got
right?
that snazzy ability where he can literally teleport or transport buildings.
So
So he's
he could
gonna
bring
set up a
the
foundation and then,
yeah,
you
bring the
know,
Pathfinders or whatever. Um, and gosh,
with
like I
how man, they're only down rank 3. They've got 2 more, and that's a lot of buildings and don't have a lot of builders. I guess he left his ritual. Maybe one of them, maybe Kirby, the evil
I was about to
overlord
say
lady, pivots into, or
they they
was
all
it
should
Hannah
know
who?
enough.
Yeah, they can help enough, but none of them have the raise ability to break something down into base components. None of them
No,
have the blue, or I guess they worked
he
on the
did. Yeah, I was
blueprint
about to say, you know that he left enough blueprints behind to keep
plus
them
all his
moving in the right
resources.
direction, plus all the resources. He pretty much only has what he could store in his cod piece, which is a lot.
Which is
Um,
a warehouse full of building materials and more.
Yes. And so, and then he also spent the 6 million plus contribution points because it was like 1 million to get in and then 5 million to make sure you really
Oh,
know what you're
he's
doing.
yeah, contribution
He
up the
did all
wazoo,
that
all that.
work
I
for
was
like,
wondering when that fat stack of cash was going to come in because, his mom hit the lotto, ended up maxing out his account for whatever he could, and then it had just been gaining money.
but
But
he gave his
he tied
mom
it
all
in
that.
well
Yeah.
with the whole basic supply and demand economic lesson that we got from this
Hmm.
book.
Hmm.
And people say fantasy isn't reality. What is reality anymore?
What is reality? This book is all about that question as they're all digital now, right? And
Well,
what is
that plus
digital?
like you can't tell me
Singularity
people
trapping.
really die because Cal, it's inside his soul space, and essentially with the Bifrost when he goes over there, I think something about like if it doesn't work out, you can always come back to the main plane of existence, and then kind of that whole incident with Poppy where Poppy was like, I will destroy you if you threaten my family. And she just looks at him like, kind of hard to do that when we've got this magical field of can't touch this. Yeah. I
Yeah, yeah.
plus
Oh,
the one thing that didn't really get addressed from the previous book when all the sea monsters were coming out of the great depths and rampaging life as we know it is when we're getting back out. I know, please, Dakota, continue with the series. I'm fine staying in Eternium, but I'm just curious because that was totally Cal releasing giant evil monsters to be like, all right, humans, you get to play the game now too.
Uh,
Maybe it's WoW. Maybe we get like random flashbacks or different viewpoints where we get to see it from Cal. How he's essentially Cal and Danny, where he's relearning how to do stuff outside of his soul space, and he's trying to like, oh, Bill does it on Ragnarok and Bobaverse, with the planet, make the planet livable.
Terraform.
Yeah, he's trying to terraform the Earth as we know it to allow magic, because in Divine Dungeon, he absorbs all the magic and destroys the natural ley
Mm-hmm.
lines.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's been a minute since I've done the Divine Dungeon, but it'd be fun to go back and look at some of the things that Cal sees, and Joe
I really
sees towards
think,
the end there of book 5, as far as foreshadowing,
yeah,
looking at it at this point. That would be a lot of fun. And I'm really interested to see. I know that I read on Goodreads that he's anticipating this series being close to 15 books, but
good.
we've spent the first 5 books on plane one, and looking at how they have like the tournament set up for like the 8 or whatever planes kind of like going, and
Oh, yeah.
progressively, once you defeat them, you move up to the next plane where you choose who to partner with, and then it'll basically be like half of the races against the other half of the races, with the other losers kind of like,
Duck.
um, yeah, yeah. So we've spent 5 books just dealing with the quote unquote Wolfmen, even though we defeated them at the end of the second book, or second point 5 book, as point 5, 2.5 was them having the fallout and dealing with the shattered race, and then 3 and 4 were getting ready for being strong enough to progress, and then yeah.
End of 5, we get only Joe, and it's kind of like he gets kicked out. But we did learn several ways that people can, essentially farm stats. We
Mm-hmm.
did run into an interesting situation with why is it so hard to clear certain areas, because the world's evolving. They talk
Yeah.
about an incident where there's a guild that essentially keeps trying to bum rush a um, boss, which I don't quite understand how that works, because when you die, you get a pretty hefty respawn time. So bum rush over like minimum 3 hours didn't make sense. Anyway, what they saw as just basic mobs are evolving and leveling up, and that brings back the full circle of like the Wolfmen are actually people, as we know from the Divine Dungeon series,
Mm-hmm.
and they refer to themselves as the people.
Right. I can't remember if I said it already, but I enjoy the fact that Hans kind of slipped up in his little, um, talk to Joe, and started using like the Divine Dungeon cultivator slash infernal terms when he was
Oh
talking about
yeah,
like the different
celestial,
essences.
infernal, and
Yeah, yeah. So it was a good little like nudge, like, yes, it's all the same thing, but now we're using these gamer terms, and I
well, that's what really makes me want to go through the Arturian one, because initially how Joe starts to compress his mana is
mhm,
similar to how Dale
yes.
learns how to do it. But then when he meets that threshold, he goes more Arturian's route by having it free flowing
Mhm.
outside of him. But the reality is, you just got to go the Wisp route or the Danny route, because they are a thought construct of energy.
Yes. Yes. Um,
Yeah.
gosh, we could have a lot of fun just doing some videos, and maybe we will, just around like the
I really
lore and
want
stuff.
to dive deep and be like, look at this, look at this, look at this Easter
Yes.
egg list
Yes.
of all the causal connections, and it's going to take a long time, and I want to do it right because I want to get the quotes, and I want to be
Yes.
like, oh, hey, this is related to that. Like, the very first mob we fight is a bashing bunny. Al's very whole first floor is the bashers, the
Bashers.
bashing bunnies.
Yes. Yes.
The wolfmen are the people. Yeah, anyway.
We're already brainstorming about the direction we want to go in 2021 with some of our content. Our fellow geeks, your feedback is always appreciated. Let us know wherever you can reach out to us. We want to keep making stuff that you guys are interested in, as well as us.
Yeah, this is started because we do this anyway, and then
Yes.
in continuation, there's got to be people out there that also do this anyway that can do it with us.
Yep. 2020, the world got a whole lot smaller as we all join the virtual world. Too bad it's not as cool as Eternium, but we work with what we got, and we appreciate geeking out with you guys, and definitely plan to work more on the spoiler-filled reviews because we've gotten a lot of great feedback from you that you want us to do more of that.
Or summary recaps? Or Geek
Yes,
Outs? Okay.
summary recaps.
Yeah,
Then the tech videos you guys
that
have let us know you want to see more of. So just keep throwing that feedback our way. Comments below,
not enough hours in the day.
Discord, all that stuff. We read them even if we don't get back to you guys right away.
I am very bad and on second shift with I guess she's not considered newborn. Is that where toddler comes from? Where they toddle around? Because for a penguin, it's a waddle, but for a toddler, it's a toddle.
I think that would be a fun lit RPG / muse line that we can add into one of our writings
man,
there.
it makes a lot of sense if you add extra limbs. Because if you have 4 legs and you're a centaur, it's gonna feel weird.
The visuals. Reeling it back in.
Okay, sorry.
Ruthless. What else? We kind of talked high level, bounced around. Anything specific you want to get in on this geek out before we start talking about and trying to work through what we're going to do next week? We're kind of playing it fast and loose on our upcoming geek outs, as like everybody, we try to wrap up 2020.
Yeah, we kind of all over the place with everything. Lots of exciting content to come. If you subscribe, great, but then you got to turn on that bell notification to actually see the relevance. But then if you contact us on Discord, it also will notify you because bots are a thing and awesome, and that will we're going to do it. It's a thing. It's happened. Not really technical difficulties, polls. So
Yes.
I want to go full tilt, lit RPGs. Carl wants to play in the real world.
There's so many good
We have
books.
so many books, so maybe we'll let you decide.
Polls. Polls. Yes. That might be a thing for 2021. Maybe have at least one a month fan poll as or geek poll, or yeah. Get that going. Definitely do want to do more lit RPG. It's probably my new favorite subgenre. I know it's been around for a while, but it's finally hit more mainstream, and trying to convert more of our book buddies to read them with us, because we know we're not the only book / gamers out there, and it really scratches that itch.
And even if you're not into video games, into MMORPGs, another lit RPG series, The Land. It has like lit RPG elements, but
Mm-hmm.
it's essentially Lord of the Rings on steroids with some random guy from Earth. Like he gets trapped in it, and there's all the basic fantasy races.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, like it's essentially a fantasy book with some stats and learning spells instead of it being, oh,
Yes.
instead of it not explaining things like when Gandalf comes back and he's, oh, what is he? He's a different version. He's like white Gandalf.
Yep.
What is
Yep.
he?
Gandalf the
Anyway, when he
White.
comes back, you know, he's super powered where, you know, versus DBZ, it's like, oh, he's Super Saiyan 3 or blah, 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 where it's like quantifiable. Yeah. Anyway, more people love it. Join me.
Yes. Yes. I could go on a rant about Dragon Ball Z and their naming conventions and how funny they are, but that's
Well,
not this stream.
that is okay. That's not this stream.
That's not this stream.
All the memes about people trying to buy Xboxes and then people misunderstanding them and giving them the old version because Xbox One, Xbox Series X,
Yes.
too many X's
Yes.
and boxes, and
Yes.
none of them got checked correctly, so you all fail.
All fail. Next week, Pete, what are we geeking out to? Putting you on the spot.
I didn't figure that out. We'll be doing a video for leading that line of thought.
Yeah.
I guess if we're just gonna shoot from the hip, we'll say, what is it? Divine or not divine? Dungeon Lord Book 3.
I like it. I like it.
We did 2, right?
I believe we did too. We'll take another step down the path of getting current with that.
Yeah, there's only 4 out, and it's a great series. It follows more.
It's another good one that lines up with what you were talking about too. And I want to do a video that kind of tiers how deep in the lit RPG genre it is compared to a fantasy genre. And this is a good one that's kind of like, hey, let's play more in the dark fantasy / Dungeons and Dragons fantasy genre, but it's still lit RPG compared to like some of the really deep lit RPGs. You're trapped in the game, right? Like here, you're still trapped in the game, but it's more of a world than it is a game, right?
Yeah, and I guess yeah. What we need to talk about the different levels. I need to do a isekai, anime, manga, lit RPG, reality sucks.
So let's go play in the virtual world. So with that said, final thoughts on Ruthless, Toothless?
Can't wait for more. There is so much potential, and it's going to be different for I enjoy a lot of other books how they kind of like show both the good guy and the bad guy and then they, you know, fight and it's like, haha, I knew you're playing all along. But then you get to that point after where you're like, aha, to the victor goes the spoils. And it turns out that it wasn't really the bad guy, and that's why we're following his storyline as well. That doesn't happen here. That's not Dakota Krout.
No.
But we're going to have to get a couple viewpoints or just go full Joe. Curious to see how it all pans out.
I'm right there with you. Dungeon Lord is one of those series, though, which we're doing next week. We still doing 8 p.m. Eastern next week?
Yeah, we'll finish out this year, 8 p.m.
Good,
Eastern.
good. Awesome. Thanks for geeking out with us, guys. Had a lot of fun with this book. Glad to be current on this series.
Oh.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was thinking Murder Hobo.
Maybe we'll do that one later in the month. We got a couple more to go, and Ascend Online. I want to get that one on our docket.
Oh, yeah, because they got.
Um,
Maybe we just pivot for all the new potential. Because
we
didn't Life 4 come out or Life 5 come out?
it's not on audiobook yet. But Ascend comes out this week, so we can check that out. Give everybody a little bit of time to listen to it. Maybe we'll get that one the following Sunday or the one after that. But yes, yes. Thanks for
Sorry
geeking
for
out
the
with us,
ramble.
guys.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.